All right, I am watching the clock hit 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern at a time that I think we're the closest to like starting at the second than we've ever been.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So good afternoon to you. How are you today?
Uh, Congratulations to us, I guess.
Yeah, we did it.
We
We did
pulled
it.
this off. Yeah. Not bad for a Sunday afternoon live discussion of today's field note, though. So thank you to everybody for joining us for Lead Better, and it's a really fun topic, loneliness. In fact, that the title is "Loneliness in a Hyper-Connected Workplace." So,
Yeah.
are we hyper-connected or are we isolated and desolate?
No, we're definitely hyper connected. I think it's kind of natural when you think about what hyperconnection is. What does that mean? Like I am connected by Slack, I'm connected by social media, I'm connected by text, I'm connected by email to all of my colleagues. Where this is the first job I've ever had where like all of my connectivity opportunities have been utilized. In any previous
Okay.
job that I've had, it hasn't been this much. So it's interesting how hyper connected that we are. And of course, the entire workplace is that way. Of course, we're like that. And even with all that hyper connectivity, our loneliness, if we can call it an epidemic, is getting greater and greater and greater. So,
It does seem to be the case. So leaders need to be aware of it. Now, I will say going in, part of the challenge on this field note will be that one of the fundamental umbrella sort of factors around admired leadership is we're always looking for the universals. And we're generally telling leaders, you don't have to be, I mean, yeah, you can be aware of people's particular psychologies or motivations. But if you're going into any given situation being like, okay, this person's motivated by praise and this person is motivated by fear, and I've got to, stroke you this way and I've got to talk to you in this particular tone, you're probably not going to get anything done.
right.
And you can be all fascinated with people's Enneagram numbers, and there may be truth in all of that.
Mhm.
And we would say, fine, you need to know a lot about your own psychology too. But what do the best leaders do in terms of patterns around how they work at scale, right? So when we're talking about coming together, the question here is, yes, you're obviously leading now in a time where you either have had a work from home situation. Now people are coming back to the office. It might be blended. You're trying to connect and motivate and all of the rest of it. So in this particular factor, we know loneliness is an increasing problem. It's actually a major issue in terms of how older adults stay young, is if they can keep a social life going. And that keeps their cognitive things. So there's a lot at stake here. So the question I think to you, for Mikey, is as you read this, how did you integrate that idea of how much a leader should lean in on noticing a worker, a team member, a colleague who might be lonely, and bringing to bear thoughts, strategies around that person and still keep everything else in balance?
You know, this is a challenge fit
Mm-hmm.
my definition and approach to like what leadership is almost more than any other challenge that we're trying to solve, primarily because it makes it accessible for any leader to do something about it. So our operative definition of leadership is making people and situations better, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so the most, I think it might be an illustration that's in our platform, but it's one that sticks in my mind is like something that I look to do all the time when I'm walking into a stadium and I recognize that we're all lined up and we're all crowded in through
Mm-hmm.
just to go up and check another door. Like there might be one other door that is open, right? To increase the traffic flow where we are unnecessarily
right.
bottlenecking ourselves.
All the
And
time. Yeah.
yeah, and this is like one of the, so for me to step, I don't have to be like a designated line leader to go up and find another door that's open, right? And this feels like one of those very accessible things where this is what a leader does, right?
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing that someone is lonely and inviting them into some kind of a social engagement and fixing that solution or doing all they can to make things better is something that I don't have to wait for a title before I do that.
Mm-hmm.
I could be
Right.
the most junior person in any organization and still feel like I have an obligation to solve this problem. So I
Right.
love it. I love this topic for that very reason. And And I think it fits the very definition of what leadership is.
Well, yeah, and I think that particularly in our relationship module, which we have in our main platform of leadership behaviors, there's a great deal around how leaders should be continually thinking about adding value in all relationships, creating conversation, how we advance conversation, how we also, in terms of motivation, inspiration, how we see other people, recognize, let them know that they're being seen,
Right.
how we express how they influence us. All of those things should make anybody that a leader interacts with feel much more connected to the leader, much more seen by the leader, and hopefully much more empowered to be themselves and to be connected to the workplace. So I think part of the question here to me is that if you're a leader and you read this field note, you'd be like, I think I've got one of these people on my team. Mm-hmm. Great. You have some ideas and there's some reasons here, and you can even recognize in the field note saying that sometimes the lonely person isn't saying, hey, I'm lonely. It's like they're not showing up for the extracurricular activity that the team has put together. They're actually withdrawing. And you kind of have to notice a little bit about what's going on in terms of that. But the way you reach out and lean into them, because first of all, you might be a little bit wrong, right? Yeah. There's a cautionary part here, which is you as the leader are not also the psychiatrist, right?
Yes.
So people have a lot of different mental health issues. And I don't think that this field note is saying, you need to be the person diagnosing these problems, right, for the people on your team. But you can say, let me just make sure that the way I'm approaching all relationships, all the people that are involved in my orbit, that I'm including this person. So I think it actually is just a broadening of attention to the universals that then actually leads to hopefully then a very positive sort of trajectory for that person in feeling that they have a place in this organization.
Right. So we talked about this maybe a week and a half ago, where we encouraged leaders through one of our field notes to actually come up with moments where people learn together, where we're actually intentionally having these extracurricular type of things. So I would like to think that those type of activities would cover my bases for handling this type of thing, right? And if someone is electing to be lonely, well, they shouldn't do that. They should show up for the thing that we paid for. Like, we wanted you to show up for it. Why didn't you just show up for it? And so this idea that says, well, some people need like a direct invitation to really feel like they're open for it, or they need. It gets into this notion of like, do I really need to do that with differences? Like, because there was another field note that we wrote last month or so, where I brought up that my mom had like a 3-sentence rule for some people in her life because they were just kind of vampiric about the way that they attached themselves. Right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And those aren't necessarily these same people, right? And some people actually do need help. So like, where to actually hit and say, I'm going to spend some of my leadership capital on this, but I'm not going to be taken advantage of. There's a bit of an art to this, to know who are the right people.
Right. Yeah. And I think maybe that's the factor that if you were to think of the best leader you've ever worked with, who had the magic touch with people, well, what do you envision them doing? Yes. How do you see them interacting with the people on their team? They're not over-indexing in one place or the other. And again, I don't think the field note is saying, all right, I've got 15 direct reports, and I'm just going to have to ignore these other 14 people for the next 3 months while I find ways to make sure that this other person is feeling included. Right. Well, that's not going to work either. Right. So you can kind of come into this and take the field note in a bit of the wrong way. I think what we're saying is bring it back to a baseline where you just know that whether you have somebody that's, as you were indicating, the psychic vampire, whether you have the person that's sort of, the know-it-all and disruptive in meetings, or you have the person that's lonely, if you start trying to figure out all of the pieces, then it's all going to fall apart. If you start treating people in an authentic way, and our authentic definition is consistency. How do I see people? Am I here to make other people better, other situations better,
Right.
then part of making other people better is being aware of some of these challenges. And I certainly want them all to work better together. And
Yes.
hopefully then you're not going to solve everybody's anger problem or everybody's loneliness problem or everybody's, whatever, personality disorder that they have. And you probably have a few of those yourself. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think then the question is, how do you think you already have a hat on, I think. Yeah.
I do. It's a celebrity hat. Yeah.
Oh, okay. How do you think if you truly had a person that had a DSM level of loneliness, how do they react in a situation like this?
Yeah.
Does this work if you put them on the other side, if yourself on the other side of this equation?
Right. Okay. So you brought up the DSM. So 40% of the men surveyed in these recent studies that I looked up about this, when they actually fit into this, 15% of men claim that they have no close friends, right? So when you dig into that cohort, 40% of those are showing up in the DSM as expressing depression, right? Depressive symptoms are showing up. So if you've got people like this on your team, chances are very likely that they could be depressed as well, right? And there's not a lot that's going on with society either to kind of help with that. For instance, the dating apps are getting, now I know that I've mentioned men a few times, but there does seem to be a gender bias towards this particular epidemic. And it wasn't specifically mentioned in the field note, but I think it exists out there. And with the dating apps, my daughter is in her early 20s. She doesn't like the dating apps, but she loves to go on them because she even said it. She said it recently. It's a good ego boost for her. My nephew, who we just spent time with, who's not married, he says those things don't work. Now, my nephew's not an ugly guy. He's actually well built. He's athletic. He's got a 401k as a 25-year-old, right?
Okay.
I think the statistics on the apps are like,
there probably are a few parents out there right now with 20-something daughters who are like, could you send over that information?
No, that's the thing. So 10% of men are getting dates on those things.
Okay.
Whereas like 70% of women who are trying to get dates are getting dates on those things. Yeah. And so our society is kind of, skewing towards this idea of a male epidemic in loneliness more than women. So in your organization, it stands to reason that maybe the activities that you're doing should maybe geared more male, right?
I suppose that's an interesting theory. That is. And by the way, you were just at a wedding of another nephew?
Yes. His brother is the one that we were talking about.
Okay.
Right? So a second.
Well, how did they meet, the people that got married?
They met at a party.
Okay. I was just checking.
Yeah, they went to a school and they met at a 4th of July party.
Okay.
Even though they were both out of school at the time, they were still lonely and thought, I don't know how I'm going to meet anybody. And so, and then they got married very quickly too. That's another story.
Right. Well, look, some of the things that a couple of quick takeaways, which is just as leaders to be mindful if you're just thinking about how you are thinking about the people on your team, because we would say that the things that help you actually inspire and motivate people tend to be just thinking a little bit around, who are the important people in their lives? What are the important passions that they have? So geography, that's important to them. And small talk actually matters. The research shows that. And beyond just, hey, how's it going, right? And you don't have to. And if you just say like, how are your kids? Like that doesn't really go that far. But if you kind of remember that, her teenager plays softball, right? Yeah. And you'd be like, how's the softball team doing these days? Or you see something that connects to that, you can bring those things up. But the point is that it's not the one-off. It's creating relationship is about cadence. It's about adding value, and for you as the leader, being curious. And I think being curious is is one of the things we call it sometimes a radar, which is just be the leader who asks questions. And then you're not going to solve everybody's problem. But if you're making this, if you're just dialing up your own relational sort of meter about 10 or 15%, you're probably going to do a lot for your whole team. And that's going to help the people that are feeling the loneliness problem as well.
Yeah. So David Morris
Mhm.
gave us a practical
Okay.
execution of like maybe a real solution that you might think about implementing. We didn't mention it in the field note, but that's why we love having commenters kind of mention this. So if you're on Substack, or even if you're not on Substack, go over to the Substack post on this and put your
There you
examples.
go.
But David
Yeah.
says one solution that his team implemented was a
Mhm.
coffee and chat in his 3
Ah.
leadership development programs,
Yeah.
where they require participants to schedule 30-minute conversations with every other participant in the program. So it could be, you're required to come up with 40 other conversations that you're having.
Yeah. Right.
After 4 years of doing this, David says the coffee and chat ranks as our highest rated
Interesting.
feature, even outperforming our core content and facilitation.
Well, that is really interesting, and I know we're a minute over, but we started right on time.
Yeah.
We have company meetings with our 100 plus people every 2 months, and different offices we have around the country, and we get together, whether it's in Scottsdale or in Philadelphia, or sometimes we're in Chicago. We haven't done one in Tampa yet, but and we should probably come to Pittsburgh. But in all of that, like, we have one coming up here that is virtual. Like, we
Right.
just the way the calendar went, we're like, okay, we're going to do this, sort of thing, and we're going to do it all virtual. And I'm sure it will be good, but I'm not looking forward to it.
I understand what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, it has a whole different feel to it
right.
that just doesn't feel as good.
Right.
And then I'm going to a conference in a couple of weeks where I know what they're doing because they've done it before, and I haven't been to this particular kind of format. But they will put people into groups with people you don't know, total strangers, and you have to kind of say when you sign up, are you okay being in one of these groups?
Right. And that
And you
group
say-
convenes the first
Right
thing on the
away.
schedule.
Yeah, right away when you get there. So you get, rather than kind of wander through 2 or 3 days where it takes you, the first 8 hours to have met 3 people, you're going to have, 8 to 10 pretty people that you know pretty well. And you know why they're there, what they're looking for. You're going to, as you have other conversations, you're going to be like, did you hear, do you know this person? Oh, they're also from Michigan,
Right.
whatever it is. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out, particularly vis-a-vis our virtual meeting, and in which we'll be able to report back and say, CRA Admired Leadership has totally failed in their endeavor, or, it wasn't as bad as we thought.
I don't know. It's worth the experiment. I just don't have high hopes for it
Oh,
myself.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, dynamite.
Thank you. See you later.